Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome. We're on the session 2 of the Enneagram as a spiritual tool. My name is Polly Peters, and I'm a member of the Adult Education Committee. Just want to welcome you all this morning. Before I hand it over to Bill this morning, again, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our next class, which we talked a little bit about last week. It's going to be led by Jeff Doan, and it will be based on a book that was written by one of his University of Chicago School of Divinity professors, Joseph Sittler. The book is Sittler Sampler. If you want a copy of the book, please see Alan Bath. He has some books. There he is in the back of the room, if you're interested in that.
An email or you could buy a book.
Exactly. And that class is going to start January 29th. So without further ado, let's open with prayer. Let us pray. Creator, sustainer, redeemer, God, hear our prayer. Be with us all this morning. Be with us both individually and collectively as we strive to better understand ourselves and in the process better understand others. As we discover more about our similarities and differences, let us come to realize our immense connectivity as we are indeed all one with God. In your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, Bill, take it away. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Once again, I was hopeful to be with my wife who ended up with pneumonia, so she won't be here today, but she hopes that next week she will for our final class on the holy ideas. For those of you, how many of you were here last week? Almost all of you. Okay, so one newbie. I'm the owner of Enneagram Chicago, which is a executive as well as personal development management class, company. I'm a certified Enneagram teacher. And my life partner, or my wife of almost 46 years, but we've been together for 50 years. She's also a certified Enneagram professional. And hopefully with a little bit more medication, she'll be with us. Anyway, the format today will be a little bit different than last week. Last week we did a lot of PowerPoint. I found out why the music wasn't playing because they didn't hit audio. If you want the presentation with the music, I'll be happy to send it to you. Anyway, the format today will be a little bit of PowerPoint, kind of set the stage for our discussion, which is on vices and virtues, or I like to say virtues and vices. Yes.
Question. Last week and today's
I'm sorry to get you. Yeah. You're welcome. I can send it to each of you if I have your email addresses. One of you reached out to me and I did send it to him. So, it's also being recorded through the church. So it'll be on, I assume, their website. Okay. So let me know if it doesn't show up on that site. I'll be happy to send it to you. Anyway, in order to get started like we did last week, I'd like to have us get a little grounded. And so I'd ask each of you to gently close your eyes and take some very deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose, down into your belly. Hold your breath for a few seconds. And then exhale through your mouth. Let it all out. Follow the breath. Notice where your attention goes. Is it going to your body? And whether you're comfortable in your chair, the temperature in the room, or is it just perfect? Or are you feeling your heart relaxed, joyous after, a great sermon, anxious or bored because you're here? Just whatever it is, notice it and let it go. Perhaps you're wondering what information will be shared today. Will it be relevant? Will it be interesting? Will it inspire more curiosity? Continue to focus on your breath, going all the way into your belly. Connect with your body center, holding it, and then releasing it. Our breath is our life force. It keeps everything in our bodies working. Bring your attention to any body sensations, feelings, thoughts that are emerging as we do this. Energy follows attention. So when you are free of noticing sensations, feelings, or thoughts, your type structure begins to relax. Your inner observer begins to notice. Its attention is on your breathing, nothing else. We're just going to sit for a few more minutes with our eyes closed, our bodies, hearts, and minds relaxed in order to be prepared for today's session. We'll now bring our attention back into the room, focus on where we are, what we're going to do over the next hour or so. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. The key objectives for today are to discuss the virtues and the vices, and we also refer to them as passions of each of the 9 types.
Damn it.
I'm sorry? I'd ask the people that are on Zoom if they can mute themselves. That'd be awesome. Because it's amplified in the room. So anybody that's on Zoom, if you could just mute yourself, because it's being amplified into the room here. Using our type's virtue to counteract its vice or passion. Look at what that really means. And explore how virtues and vices, passions impact our relationship with God. Discuss paradigm shifts if we have enough time, from a resourceful to a non-resourceful state of behavior. So very brief recap, as we discussed last week, the Enneagram chart with the 3 centers of intelligence: body, heart, and head. We use all 3, but lead from one primary center and one core type ego structure. The Enneagram is a powerful dynamic tool that defines 9 personality styles, explains unconscious patterns of behavior in the 3 intelligence centers: the sensing body center, the doing heart center, or the perceiving head center. The value of the Enneagram is it provides us a better understanding of why the gut instinct, the body center people need balance and well-being. The heart people need for connection, and the head people need for knowing. And again, we have all 3, but it's what we lead with which determines how we view and assess the world. So the GQ, or body gut center, is also referred to as the sensing action center. Type 8, often referred to as the powerful, the challenging person. Type 9, the peaceful, mediating person. And type 1, the good or perfectionist person. And again, we all have this within us. The heart side, type 2 is the loving person, the giving person. Type 3, the effective, high-performing person. And type 4, the original, creative person. And again, we all have those. And finally, the head center, we're all very cognitively aware of our head, our brain. But the 5 is the wise intellectualist. The 6 is the loyal skeptic. And the 7 is the joyful Epicurean. So let's talk a little bit about virtues and vices. What are they? As I mentioned last week, Jerry Wagner, who is Dr. Jerry Wagner, is a clinical psychologist, former psychology professor at Loyola, and former Jesuit priest, also has his own Enneagram program called Enneagram Spectrum. And in his book, he talked about the Enneagram Spectrum, it's called. He talks about what virtues are. They're good habits, virtus, meaning strength in Latin, strength that accompany a fully functioning, developing human being. We're all still developing. We have a lifespan of development. Virtues are clear, undistorted, objective expressions of spiritual energy, whereas the vices, the passions, are the bad habits. They're the distorted expressions of spiritual energy which try to substitute for the virtues. Vices and passions fuel and inflate the personality, but do not nourish the core self. Anybody have any comments about that? Have you ever heard these terms before in terms of how one is kind of battling with the other? Okay, well, as an example, my wife is supposed to be here to give you a perspective on the head center and her vice and virtue, but as a 2, my virtue is humility and my vice is pride. How does that show up for me throughout my entire life? That need that I was invincible, that I could solve everyone's problem. That was the pride coming out. I could be the solution, the helper, the giver, even if not asked. And when I learned about the Enneagram about 15, 17 years ago, I didn't resonate at all with the pride because I already was living in that state. And ultimately, through a lot of work and almost being killed, in 2001 by a driver, I was walking my dogs. I learned about humility, and I also learned about the power of receiving as well as giving. I never quite got the idea of people helping me. So again, my wife is a counterphobic 6. Her virtue is courage, and her vice or passion is fear. And she often jokes that I don't know if it's a joke, but she parented out of fear. I parented out of shame, which was my motivation. I wanted my children to like me, to connect with me, and I wanted to help them too much. And I came to that realization, unfortunately, when they were a little bit older, but I'm now practicing what I'm preaching with my grandchildren and my children to some degree. Okay, let's talk about things. The body center, and we're going to break into groups. You're all kind of sitting together in little pockets. You can move around any way you want, but I thought it'd be helpful for you to really kind of let go of some of the constraints and really talk about your particular type. And if you don't know your type, hopefully from last week's session, and a little recap today, that you have at least a kind of a sense. If you want to be typed, I offer that service, as I mentioned last week, and I have cards here. And if anyone's interested, and a couple of you are, I'll be having a one-on-one session and doing an online assessment, which will be helpful. But as far as the body center, the sensing center, type 8's virtue, now this is a big, powerful type, is innocence. It's satisfied with life as it is, no need to take action or to protect. Innocence will cause the type 8 personality to be more trusting of others, to allow themselves to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is a key here with an 8, because they would mentally perhaps equate that with weakness. Whereas 2s are very comfortable with vulnerability, but often try to assert themselves, into that 8 world of power and control. They have less of a gut reaction to judge or demand, and to learn to listen and respond to others and situations. They don't need to take action. They need to kind of go inside of themselves. The virtue of a 9 is right action. 9s can loosen the grip of, unfortunately, the term is sloth. Some of these vices are really ugly words, but it's really not how we define. When we talk about sloth, it's really more the non-engagement and moving toward taking action and being engaged. Right action is the integration of your feelings and thoughts to inspire action. They have less of a gut reaction to suppress their feelings and thoughts, and learn to be aware of their opinions and assert their confidence with others. More committed to taking right action. And the virtue of 1 is serenity. 1s can loosen the grip of their anger, which is their vice, or resentment, and move toward serenity, calmness. It will cause the type 1 personality to be calmer, to be more relaxed, and allow things to be as they are meant to be. They have a gut reaction to repress their anger, that the world is not perfect or good. That ultimately they learn to relax that, and that grip. I use the term grip a lot because that's what vices are. That black and white, absolutely no variation, and that feeling of freedom in accepting things as they are and what they are meant to be. The heart people, I mentioned type 2 is humility, which is accepting your own limits and boundaries, and unconditional giving. And again, it wasn't until I really almost died that I realized how powerful it was to let go, to allow the world to be as it is. And we'll talk next week about the holy ideas of each of these types. But for 2s, it's holy freedom or holy will. things will be as they are. We don't have to take action. And again, humility will cause the type 2 personality to be more accepting of the fact that they are wanted and loved, not for doing, but for who they are. They don't need to be of service all the time, and that they allow the 2 to have needs of their own. I grew up in the Catholic tradition where if you took care of yourself first, that was considered selfish. However, to a young 2, that was almost like taboo to take care of myself. So I just accelerated the pride, accelerated the need to help because I was being rewarded for that. And they have less of a emotional reaction for not to be needed and recognized that others don't need them to survive. And that really resonated with me. It's like, oh my God, these people actually could survive without my help. So again, it took a lot for me to wake up to that, but ultimately it was very freeing in the end. And then the virtue of type 3 is veracity or truthfulness. Type 3 is loosen the grip of self-deceit. Some people don't like that term deceit, so we call it self-deceit. It helps them to realize that they will be admired and valued for who they are, not for what they do. And remember, the heart center is all about doing. They do relationships, they do action. Whereas the body center, it's about taking action. The heart center, it's about doing. They have less of an emotional reaction. They're always doing, achieving, and longing for appreciation and validation. They can let go, ultimately, of that image that they project and truly go inside and recognize they have value too. And finally, the virtue of 4 is equanimity. They can loosen the grip of envy, of feeling something is missing in their life. Equanimity or emotional stability and mental calmness, allowing the type 4 to be at peace with their emotions, knowing their emotions can and should exist, but not control their lives and well-being. Equanimity will cause the 4 personality to be more balanced in how they perceive themselves and others. They have less of an emotional reaction to what they perceive as what they had, others have that they don't have. The idealization that they have a better relationship, they have more money, they have more creativity, all that. It's helpful for all the image types to go inside and recognize what they have, which is a lot of positive qualities. And finally, the head center. This is the perceiving center. Type 5 is detachment or letting go. 5s can loosen the grip of avarice, which is their vice, has on them, and move toward detachment or non-attachment. It'll cause the personality of 5 to be more comfortable with letting go and being more generous with their knowledge and their emotions. They have less of a cognitive fear of reaction of too much interaction with others will be catastrophic for them. And again, all of this is unconscious. It's not that you're consciously thinking, oh my God, I got to protect myself, but it's a natural instinct that they need to express appropriate response when asked for something or when allowing the inner and outer stimuli to be in balance. Type 6, it's courage, and the fear and anxiety is overwhelming to a 6. And oftentimes, as I mentioned last week, there are 2 variations of 6s, phobic and counterphobic. The phobic 6s are literally strained by the fear. The counterphobic go at the fear. They have less of a cognitive fear reaction to uncertainty and worry about possible dangers ahead. As these things are not currently happening, a lot of it is in their head. It's almost like spinning out of control. And the fears and the anxieties can drain them. And again, these are not necessarily real. It's not actually happening, but it's like, well, this happens, and this happens, and this happens, catastrophic results. And ultimately, it's all projection. It's all based on the fear or the anxiety. And then finally, type 7 is gluttony. And 7s can loosen that grip of gluttony by, or that need, I guess, better stated, the need to fill up. They want to have a little of everything, the stimulation, the excitement, the experiences, but it can allow them to be more at peace, more grounded, with their current moment and emotions and allow others to connect with them, not in a forward motion sense, but more in a present motion sense. Okay, went through all these. So once again, the vices, and now these are the virtues or the passions. And some people wonder, like, why do you call them passions? The term vice suggests really a negative connotation, but really what they are is those type restrictions, and they too try to replace the natural loving connection of the virtue. Releasing the grip of our vices and passions and our own personality styles, keeping in mind your type is a coping mechanism that you have created over from birth and learned what works, what doesn't work. But it's not actually you. Vices and passions are often reactions to wounding messages that we all carry with us from our childhood. We internalize the message that wasn't safe to be who we really are, so we modified our behavior and unconsciously put a mask on to help us survive, to get our needs met. And there's a whole other dimension of the Enneagram, which we won't have time for, about subtypes and how so the old adage, nature versus nurture. Nature is the type structure, nurture are the instinctual subtypes, which I would encourage you to explore if you have any interest. Where was I? Now I've lost my track. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's somehow I've lost. I got too carried away.
Could I just make a comment?
Yeah.
Just one of the things that was when I was first learning about vices and virtues and all is that it's helpful to think about for each type the vice and the virtue as for me it was helpful to think about it as along a continuum and on the vice side is when I'm caught up in the pattern of my type, that unconscious autopilot behavior, and there are often a lot of challenging and difficult thoughts, feelings, actions that sort of get associated with that. In my case, that's a 9. Sloth is also, I like the concept of self-forgetting, that I can often not see what but when I'm in, and you put it in the context of the spiritual, when I'm more in flow or closer to being one with God, the idea of being able to actually see what is the choice or the decision I need to make, the right action is where I can sort of move to. And so for me, that it's always been helpful to see those on this continuum. And on one side is when I'm caught up in the unconscious pattern of all of the swirl of that pattern, and in the other when I'm more able to release from that and see on the other. I don't know if that is.
No, I think it's awesome. And in fact, that term, like kind of that spinning, almost like it's so natural for us to go into that mode. But when we take a moment, even if it's a few seconds, to notice, that's the key. I mean, would you notice when you're getting in that mode and we're kind of spiraling down our into our vice world, or restriction, I guess is what would be better stated. Any other comments about that? Any observations? Have any of you noticed yourself when you tend to start spinning out of control of how you're feeling or reacting to a particular person or situation? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to, I think it's very difficult to think in that moment, to think about pausing, getting control of your thoughts and emotions. I mean, that's what we all strive for. I mean, I think that's, the sense of control, thinking clearly and all that. That's where the spirituality, the therapy, whatever you want to call it, that's what's really hard to attain. And
it is.
I think the things we strive for.
That's kind of the gift of the Enneagram, in that is that ability to begin to sort of, what we're looking for is self-awareness.
Yes.
And self-awareness sort of in the moment versus the 3 hours later when you go, oh, I can't do that different.
Yeah.
That's self-awareness and a little.
Yeah,
Right? The work of the Enneagram, I don't mean to be.
No, please, you,
The work of the Enneagram is in being able to start to see those patterns. And then that Helen Palmer, who Bill has talked about, who is one teacher of the Enneagram, talks about the developing your inner observer. And so being able to see yourself in those moments and kind of loosen the, compress the 3 hours to the in the moment. There's a fellow by the name of Viktor Frankl who was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who attributed with this to me great quote, which is says it goes something like this: between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space lies the power to choose, and in our choice, and within that choice lies our freedom. And so that whole idea of can we get
right,
stimulated or triggered and then actually see what's happening. And you are absolutely right. Way easier talked about conceptually than actually put into practice. And even as I've been studying the Enneagram for probably 15 years and doing a lot of this work, and I have periods in my life where I a lot of that.
it's humbling.
Yes.
yeah, it's humbling for all of us. I mean, actually, at the end of the day, yes,
saying that we always have to 3 hours later, oh, we should have, and that is a really powerful quote from this paper. But I think too, there is power in that self-reflection later of saying, hey, you know what, I should have would have done that, not in a self-critical way, but that's a learning opportunity for me. And I'm going to be mindful and intentional about that moving forward. How I want to be present or behave differently or not respond. They say the autopilot B, which is option C. And so to not beat ourselves up if we get flooded and we go to our rogue and unconscious behaviors, but we still learn.
Yeah, like you can return your purchases,
well, it's interesting. One of the things that Enneagram people talk about inserting the pause, and sometimes it's when we're in the mode, we're really, our vice is at full throttle, and just taking a breath, insert a pause. And self-reflection is really important, especially after you've had maybe a confrontation of some kind and you think about how you could have handled it differently. But I learned through David Daniels, who was also a partner in terms of this Enneagram, narrative Enneagram, which, by the way, I brought a copy of it. It's free. It's a really great guide on the narrativeenneagram.org. It really kind of summarizes each of the types and kind of what the purpose of studying the Enneagram is. And anyway, one of the authors or the collaborators of this guide, Dr. David Daniels, who wrote a great book, little paperback called The Essential Enneagram. And you can actually take a little test through his book as well. But he talked about harmony types and how if we're in balance with each of our centers and going through that process does help us to kind of relax the type restriction. So again, in my case of the 2, I stay within my own center when I'm at my best self, and I go to the body center under stress. But rather than be double-hearted or double-headed if I was a 5 or a 7, he suggests putting a line between the 5 and the 2, because 2 and 5 both meet at 8. But 5 meet at 8, go to 8 under security, 2s go there under stress. Imagine if you connected the dots or the line between the 2 and the 5 and the 7 and the 4, they both end up at 1. You have 3 equilateral triangles, 3 perfectly symmetrical, balanced connections. And for me, inserting that pause meant to go into my cognitive center, take a breath, think about my feelings as, are they real, or is it just that I'm emotionally distraught because someone affected my ego, or somebody didn't want my help, or I had rejection, or I want to react. And it's really easy to go to your stress type and take action. And oftentimes, again, sometimes people take action by going to their body center. Others use other access. But the point of all of this is noticing it. And like Todd said, it's a process, it's a spectrum. We're always somewhere on it. Sometimes we're completely at peace and relaxed and completely open. And other times we're highly constricted and rigid. And noticing, yes, you want to say something? Oh, but noticing both of those ends. And ultimately, if we can even just get to the middle, it's an ideal place, but insert the pause. Notice when you're getting agitated, reactive, or sad, or despondent, whatever the reaction is, just notice it. And it can go away. I mean, you can think about other things when you calm that type structure. It's like a vice, or literally a vice, like a metal vice. It's constricting. Any other? Yes.
So I just wanted to say that I think that it depends who we interact with as far as how we feel in that moment, so that there are people who just trigger you.
Yeah.
And there are people who just, I don't know, they just kind of put you at ease. There are people who really see you for how you see yourself. And there are people who just don't see you as who you are. They're like in another realm of their own or whatever. And it's very, very difficult. So that's another assessment in the moment.
Yes.
Of whether you're gonna react, or whether you're gonna like back off, or whether you're just gonna come out saying something to make them think about what they're actually saying. Or, so this whole thing with relationships is something that is part of that, because we are different people with different, we're just different. We respond differently, we feel differently, bodily, emotionally.
Yeah. And noticing that
Yeah.
if the reaction is more a body anger center, a heart emotional shame center, or a head fear center, are we feeling, when I first learned the Enneagram, I really didn't like some of the terms, because immediately you zero in on all the negative, shame, anger, fear, all these vices. But I came to realize all they are just kind of ways to notice. Again, I have to notice when I'm getting stimulated to want to be helpful to the point where I'm intruding on other people's boundaries. They didn't ask for my help. And when you are constantly in that mode, helping, giving, that's the pride. It starts getting inflated in terms of importance. They can't survive without me. And as a father of 5 children, I thought I had to be invincible to them. I had to provide for them. I had to do everything for them. And now I'm like, when I don't have that natural reaction, my children notice. I mean, they're all adults now, but they're like, what's wrong with dad? It's like, well, dad's just being dad. I don't have to entertain, provide, solve all your problems. And again, I find, they talk about, I don't want to digest for a minute, but your shadow, kind of like that part of you that you really don't want to acknowledge or see, it's always there. And certain people that do agitate you, oftentimes are a reflection of that. And you don't like it, and you don't want it. And then you got to think, well, why is this person so irritating? Driving here this morning, this guy cut me off, almost hit my car, because you had to get on the interstate a little bit faster than me, a second faster. And my wife has told me to calm down when it comes to like honking at people, because my immediate reaction was like, you idiot, you almost hit my car. You could have caused an accident. There was a guy standing there looking for money, and there could have been a catastrophic outcome. And I, of course, honked the horn because I wanted him to notice that there was a guy there and he was almost hitting my car. He gets on the interstate and I can see him looking at me in his rearview mirror. So, of course, right away, I started imagining all kinds of stuff like, I don't like this person, what kind of and then I'm like, Bill, take it easy. You didn't get hit. Everyone's fine. take a breath. You're getting on the interstate with crazy drivers. And ever since my accident, I'll tell you, I'm very aware of people like in cars because they almost take on a completely different power, that they're invincible because they're behind this machine they're running. So anyway, any other comments about this? Because we're gonna break off pretty soon into groups and talk a little bit deeper about it. But just as a recap, if the presence of your vice, you simply observe it and don't act on it. You experience, as an example, if you're feeling greedy, don't grab. Then you are practicing the virtue of letting go or detachment. Type 5. Or according to perennial wisdom in many religious traditions, the vice of the passion is your prominent, quote unquote, fault or cardinal sin. Consider how your type and passion influences your perception, your choices, your behaviors. If your prominent vice is gluttony, type 7, notice how your desire for new and varied experience, that FOMO energy, and your fear and avoidance of pain, especially emotional pain, they're all manifestations of what is holding you back from truly experiencing goodness. So again, we sometimes do have to sit in pain in order to grow from that. But I'll tell you, you see, if a person with a lot of emotions coming toward a 7, they're running for the other direction, because that means they're going to have stuff's going to come up for that. Again, these are generalizations, not all 7s. Some people, depending on their awareness. It's interesting. I do a lot of typings around the globe, and I can usually tell when I get their assessment back if they're really high scores, and almost all the types, I'm like, oh, this person has done some work on themselves, because ultimately that's the goal. If we ultimately can see the viewpoint of all 9 types, we can access all 3 centers equally, we become more universal ourselves. Okay, let's see where we are now. Okay, talked about this peripheral self. This is virtues versus vices. Trace the connections of your type through the fabric of your personality. Okay, when are you most aware of that vice? When are you most reactive to it? Is it a person, a situation, and how do those stretch out and touch much of what you do and how you do it, how people see you? Okay, I mean, I know the perception people had that I was a great achiever. In fact, for a long time, I thought I was a 3 because I liked the idea. Hey, notice me, I'm successful, I'm doing a lot. But ultimately, at the core, it wasn't about achievement as much as it was about helping and giving. Okay, so again, body, head, heart. So we're not going to get into this right now. What we're going to do right now is stop for a moment. And I'd really love to have people gather in your respective tables and talk about what we've learned today. But most importantly, when do you notice when you are truly at your best self? And what is the environment? And what are again, if you know your type structure, then you know your vice, or you know your virtue. But any questions before we get started with these little group discussions? We're going to do a little bit of dialogue amongst ourselves, and then I'm going to ask somebody at each table kind of, or anyone else who wants to share when maybe a time in your life or a time, what you're going through right now, where you feel like you're kind of gripped by the vice of your Enneagram type versus the virtue. Yes.
Well, I'm a newbie to this.
Okay.
So I really don't know what my type is.
Okay.
I was sort of trying to figure it out last week,
Okay.
but then I got busy and didn't get a chance to do any more. So how do I interact?
Okay, well, I'm going to walk around and talk to people. You have an Enneagram expert at the table, so that's a helpful resource if I could draw upon Todd there. But there also there's some great resources. I mean, you want to say, okay. But it's really more of a dialogue of, you feel you lead from your head, from your heart, or from your body. And how do you know that? Well, how do you perceive the world? Are you a perceiving type? Are you a gut instinct type? Or are you an emotional relationship type? And over the years, most people have figured out how they lead Now, some people really don't have an awareness of it, and that's fine, but I would encourage you each to just talk amongst yourselves about what you think this kind of road toward spiritual development helps you. Next week, we'll be talking about the holy ideas of each of these types. But ultimately, type structure, ego structure is what we need to get through the life. That's how we got where we are. But it's also what blinds us to our relationship with God or higher power, the universe, however you define it. But ultimately, it sounds really crazy, and I keep bringing up my near-death experience, but it wasn't until then that I truly felt I was completely at the mercy of other people. I was truly humbled by the fact that I should be dead, but I'm not. And it was kind of a moment where I can't even talk about it because it was so powerful. And that's my anchor. Okay. You don't have to experience what I experienced, but all of us have had moments in our lives where we have had incredible joy and an incredible sadness. I read somewhere recently that 99.9% of the people in the world walking around have experienced some sadness, some loss. We all experience loss. And again, that goes back to how we process. Okay. So God forbid someone dies. How do you react to that? Is it incredible grief? Is it incredible, got to fix it, is it incredible? Whatever the natural reaction is what you really want to look at right now. Any other questions? Any observations? Are you completely baffled at this point? Okay, so I would ask you I'm going to walk around. I was hopeful Colleen would be here. She could help me do this, but talking a little bit about, your group. Hello, everyone. Can I?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We're doing this brainstorming together, and the people on Zoom were probably wondering what's going on. I wanted to, I'm respectful of the time, and I don't know how much time you all have, but we did have pretty robust discussions, at least at a couple of the tables I was at. Is there someone from each table that would like to share some of their thoughts, observations of what they learned either last week or this week? And again, we have people on Zoom who have been graciously listening to a lot of mumbling and looking at a chart. So we can start with, yes, would you like to start? Okay.
I'm not going to get into the details, but some of the themes that came up with our group were interesting. We chose to focus really on what causes our best selves to come forward. And we thought, life transitions as you move from different chapters of your life is an excellent time to be thinking, what's my growth opportunity? What is the things that I want to change and make different? That came up a lot. Some people were doing crafting, or they were more in touch with body versus mind and head. But that was the common theme. This transition from different stages in life was very helpful for growth and for overcoming some of these vices. It's interesting. My particular vice is avarice. And I'm kind of with you, Bill. These words kind of make you think, I am kind of for ideas. I'm greedy for ideas. Yeah. As a 5. And I just love new ideas. But anyway, don't let the words off put you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Try to get to the themes, and we're waiting for next week when we get more into the spiritual aspects. So anyway.
You don't want? Okay. All right. That might be reflective of the type structure. We'll get back to you. Anybody from that group over there? Would you mind?
Yeah.
Hey, come up here. Yeah, that way the people on Zoom can see and hear you.
Impromptu presentation here. Hello, everybody. So it, as it happens, two of us at our table had investigated this before, and as you mentioned, we were threes, and so we just really did talk about the way I framed it, thinking about is like when you're in the flow, when you're feeling really good, you feel like things are going well, you know, personally or professionally, or a particular project or life or with your spouse or whatever it is, you know, why is that? What's going on? And a little bit about that for me happens to be that like the efficiency kind of thing is really, I feel good when things are going well. Then conversely, we were just talking a little about this, when don't you feel great, like you feel like, oh, I'm stuck, what's going on here with whatever, again, personal, professional situation. And again, as I said, conversely, then for me, it's when people are not being efficient, it's a problem for me. You know, you chop, you got to get the thing done, you know, and I gave an example of my fiance that like, he's happy we're driving somewhere, we'll get there. Whatever route, we'll get there. It's all good. No worries, we'll get there. Whereas I'm like, look, fastest way, go left here, go right there, go da. There's a lot of traffic over there. Why are you going over there? Let's go. Anyway, so all it is to say is that I try to be aware, not to say that I always am, but that's one little example. But we did talk a little bit about David, and everybody at the table each gave some examples of when they feel good and when they don't, and sort of what that looks like. So that's our story. Thank you.
I think one of the things that comes to mind here is making sure we're not judging each other or ourselves. Because oftentimes what happens is the Enneagram has been around since the Greeks. I mean, it's centuries old. It has been filtered through a variety of spiritual traditions, religious traditions, now psychological and even psychiatric conditions. But the point of it is to embrace what we know about ourselves as we learn. One of the things that was brought up at that table over there is, and we didn't really talk much about how the types align under certain conditions. And type 3, 7, and 8, often referred to as the initiator types. They want action, they want to move forward. But again, 3 different energies. The 3 is about achievement and performance. The 7 is about exploration of ideas and creative brainstorming, and the 8 has already done it. They haven't really waited to get the input from the other 2. Now, again, these are extreme cases, but it's when the 8 does tap into the heart, which is their vulnerable space, and the head, which is their stress space, they become more alert. Now, the soloists, 4, 5, and 9, tell me what you need, I'll get it done, leave me alone. Okay, I don't need a 3 coming to me and say, how are we doing on that project? Because I know, just tell me what, and it's got to be authentic and it's got to be real and meaningful. Great word. And then the cooperators, we had a gentleman over there that talked about the 1, 2, and 6. They want to make sure everybody's getting along and they're doing it right. So the 1's got a very clear delineation, right, wrong. They're checking off the boxes. The 2 wants to make everybody happy and make sure everyone's getting along. And the 6 is already checking, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? I mean, I live with a 6, and there are times when she'll ask me a question, whether I thought about doing something, like, you got to be kidding me. You thought I wouldn't do that? Well, I just want to make sure. Like taking the garbage out on Tuesday morning, I know we have to do that. But it's just a little thing like, I might miss something, you know, because I don't think that way. So again, next week, it's gonna be much more focused on the spiritual dimension. I mean, we got a little bit into it today with the virtues and the vices, but is there anything that I can share with you? I mean, that article that I shared earlier, in fact, the lady over there, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry. No, I mean, the woman who has David's book. Yeah, that is an excellent primer, but that is related to the narrative Enneagram. So if you go to narrativeenneagram.org, that little handout is readily available. And it's a really good summation of all the types and really why is it important to even know. So anything else? Next week, I will also share that article. I'll give you a reference. You can go to David Daniel's website and find it about the harmony triad theory. That was kind of an aha thing for me when I learned that. Any other questions?
The name of the article. I only heard Dan.
Yeah, it's Dr. David Daniels, and it's the harmony triad theory.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And you'll see it on his website. You can also probably find it on the narrativeenneagram.org site. They're very generous with what they share to the world, so to speak. They also have the membership version. Okay, well, this has been great. Thank you very much for your time.